It was June 24th, 1963, just 2 months before the March on Washington, when the nation witnessed something extraordinary. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, two towering figures with radically different visions for Black America, appeared on the same televised program. Filmed in a Boston studio for the groundbreaking PBS special The Negro and the American Promise, the interviews offered a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the minds of these civil rights giants. While King calmly championed nonviolent resistance as a force for moral transformation, Malcolm X delivered a sharp rebuke of integration and forgiveness. On that night, their opposing philosophies were laid bare for the country to confront. Viewer discretion is advised.
Malcolm X, one of the most articulate exponents of the Black Muslim philosophy, has said of your movement and your philosophy that it plays into the hands of the white oppressors, that they are happy to hear you talk about love for the oppressor because this disarms the Negro and fits into the stereotype of the Negro as a meek, turning the other cheek sort of creature. Would you care to comment on Mr. X's beliefs?
Well, I don't think of love as, in this context, as emotional bosh. I don't think of it as a weak force. But I think of love as something strong and that organizes itself into powerful, direct action. This is what I tried to teach in the struggle in the South, that we are not engaged in a struggle that means we sit down and do nothing. That there's a great deal of difference between non-resistance to evil and nonviolent resistance. Non-resistance leaves you in a state of stagnant passivity and deadened complacency, wherein nonviolent resistance means that you do resist in a very strong and determined manner. And I think some of the criticisms of nonviolence, or some of the critics, fail to realize that we are talking about something very strong, and they confuse non-resistance with nonviolent resistance.
He goes beyond that in some of the things I've heard him say that this is deliberately your philosophy of love of the oppressor, which he identifies completely with the nonviolent movement, he says, this philosophy and this movement are actually encouraged by whites because it makes them comfortable. It makes them believe that Negroes are meek, supine creatures.
Well, I don't think that's true. If anyone has ever lived with a nonviolent movement in the South, from Montgomery on through the Freedom Rides and through the sit-in movement and the recent Birmingham movement, and see the reactions of many of the extremists and reactionaries in the white community, he wouldn't say that this movement or this philosophy makes them comfortable. I think it arouses a sense of shame within them often, in many instances. I think it does something to touch the conscience and establish a sense of guilt. Now, so often people respond to guilt by engaging more in the guilt-evoking act in an attempt to drown the sense of guilt. But this approach certainly doesn't make the white man feel comfortable. I think it does the other thing. It disturbs this conscience, and it disturbs this sense of contentment that he's had.
James Baldwin raises still another point about the whole nonviolent position and approach. He does not reject it in the ways that Malcolm X does, but he raises the question of whether it will be possible to contain the Negro people within this framework of nonviolence if we continue to have more of the kinds of demonstrations that we had in Birmingham.
Well, I think these brutal methods used by the Birmingham police force and other police forces, will naturally arouse the eye of Negroes. And I think there is the danger that some will be so aroused that they will retaliate with violence. I think, though, that we can be sure that the vast majority of Negroes who engage in the demonstrations and who understand the nonviolent philosophy will be able to face dogs and all of the other brutal methods that are used without retaliating with violence, because they understand that one of the first principles of nonviolence is a willingness to be the recipient of violence while never inflicting violence upon another. And none of the demonstrators in Birmingham engaged in aggressive or retaliatory violence. It was always someone on the sideline who had never been in the demonstrations and probably not in the mass meetings and had never been in a nonviolent workshop. So I think it will depend on the extent to which we can extend the teaching of the philosophy of nonviolence to the larger community rather than those who are engaged in the demonstrations.
Well, how do you maintain this type of discipline, control, and dignity?
We do a great deal in terms of teaching both the theoretical aspects of nonviolence as well as the practical application. We even have courses where we go through the experience of being roughed up. And this kind of socio-drama has proved to be very helpful in preparing those who are engaged in demonstrations. The other thing is...
Does this even include the children?
Yes, it includes the children. In Birmingham, where we had several young we had some as young as 7 years old to participate in the demonstrations, and they were in the workshops. In fact, none of them went out for a march. None of them engaged in any of the demonstrations before going through this kind of teaching session. So that through this method, we're able to get the meaning of nonviolence over. And I think there is a contagious quality in a movement like this when everybody talks about nonviolence and being faithful to it and being dignified in your resistance. It tends to get over to the larger group because this becomes a part of the vocabulary of the movement.
What is the relationship between your movement and such organizations as the NAACP, CORE, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee? They're separate organizations,
yes.
But do you work together?
Yes, we do. As you say, each of these organizations is autonomous, but we work together in many, many ways. Last year, we started a voter registration drive, an intensified voter registration drive, and all of the organizations are working together. Sometimes 2 or 3 are working together in the same community. The same thing is true with our direct action programs. In Birmingham, we had the support of SNCC and CORE and the NAACP. CORE sent some of its staff members in to assist us, and SNCC sent some of its staff members. Roy Wilkins came down to speak in one of the mass meetings and make it clear that even though the NAACP cannot operate in Alabama, we had the support of the NAACP, so that we are all working together in a very significant way, and we are doing even more in the days ahead to coordinate.
Is there any machinery for coordination actually exists now?
Well, we have had a sort of coordinating council where we get together as often as possible. Of course, we get involved in many of our programs in the various areas and can't make as many of these meetings as we would like, but we often come together, I mean the heads of all of these organizations, to try to coordinate our various efforts.
What about the federal government? Have you made any direct appeal?
I think Mr. Kennedy has done some significant things in civil rights. but I do not feel that he has yet given the leadership that the enormity of the problem demands.
By Mr. Kennedy, now, do you mean the president or the
Yes,
Attorney
I'm
General?
speaking now of the president, mainly. And I would include the Attorney General. I think both of these men are men of genuine goodwill, but I think they must understand more about the depths and dimensions of the problem. And I think there is a necessity now to see the urgency of the moment. There isn't a lot of time. Time is running out, and the Negro is making it palpably clear that he wants all of his rights, that he wants them here, and that he wants them now.
No, this is done by those who were guilty of all those things that the counterpart of all those things you just mentioned. The white people who were guilty of white supremacy try and hide their own guilt by accusing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad of teaching black supremacy when he tries to uplift the mentality, the social, mental, economic condition of black people in this country. And Jews who have been guilty of exploiting the black people in this country economically, civically, and otherwise hide their guilt by accusing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad of teaching, of being anti-Semitic, simply because he teaches our people to go into business for ourselves and try and take over the economic leadership in our own community. And this other thing, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, and what was this other?
And hatred.
And hatred. And since the white people collectively have practiced the worst form of hatred against Negroes in this country, and they know that they are guilty of it, now when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad comes along and begins to list the historic deed, the historic attitude, the historic behavior of the white man in this country toward the black people in this country, again, the white people are so guilty that they can't stop doing these things to make Mr. Muhammad appear wrong, so they hide their wrong by saying that he is teaching hatred. History is not hatred. Actually, we are Muslims because we believe in the religion of Islam. We believe in one God. We believe in Muhammad as the apostle of God. We practice the principles of the religion of Islam, which mean prayer, charity, fasting, brotherhood. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that since the Western society is deteriorating, it has become overrun with immorality, that God is going to judge it and destroy it, and the only way black people who are in this society can be saved is to not integrate into this corrupt society, but separate ourselves from it, reform ourselves, lift up our moral standards, and try and be godly instead of try and integrate with God instead of trying to integrate with the white man, or try and imitate God instead of trying to imitate with the white man.
It has been suggested also that this movement preaches a gospel of violence.
No, the black people in this country have been the victims of violence at the hands of the white man for 400 years. And following the ignorant Negro preachers, we have thought that it was godlike to turn the other cheek to the brute that was brutalizing us. And today, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is showing black people in this country that just as the white man and every other person on this earth has God-given rights, natural rights, civil rights, any kind of rights that you can think of when it comes to defending himself, black people we should have the right to defend ourselves also. And because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad makes black people brave enough, men enough to defend ourselves no matter what the odds are, the white man runs around here with the doctrine that Mr. Muhammad is advocating violence when he's actually telling Negroes to defend themselves against violent people.
I see. Well, Reverend Martin Luther King preaches a doctrine of nonviolent insistence upon the rights of the American Negro. What is your attitude toward this philosophy?
The white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolent. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's this American white man. And they have proved it throughout the country by the police dogs and the police clubs. 100 years ago, they used to put on a white sheet and use a bloodhound against Negroes. Today, they have taken off the white sheet and put on police uniforms. They've traded in the bloodhounds for police dogs, and they're still doing the same thing. And just as Uncle Tom, back during slavery, used to keep the Negroes from resisting the bloodhound or resisting the Ku Klux Klan by teaching them to love their enemy or pray for those who use them despitefully. Today, Martin Luther King is just a 20th century or modern Uncle Tom or a religious Uncle Tom who is doing the same thing today to keep Negroes defenseless in the face of attack that Uncle Tom did on the plantation to keep those Negroes defenseless in the face of the attacks of the Klan in that day.
But the goal of Dr. King is full equality and full rights of citizenship for Negroes.
The goal of Dr. Martin Luther King is to give Negroes a chance to sit in a segregated restaurant beside the same white man who had brutalized them for 400 years. The goal of Dr. Martin Luther King is to get Negroes to forgive the people who have brutalized them for 400 years by lulling them to sleep and making them forgetting what those whites have done to them. But the masses of black people in America today don't go for what Martin Luther King is putting down. As you said in one of your articles, it's psychologically insecure, or something of that sort. I forget how you put it. But you didn't endorse what Martin Luther King was doing yourself.
I do not reject his goals of full integration and full equality rights for American citizens. Do you reject these goals?
If you don't think that he's walking on the right road, I'm quite sure you don't agree that he'll get to the right place. And if you would classify his method as psychologically unrealistic, I think that if a man's method is psychologically unrealistic, which means the road or the means or the method that he's using, I think as a psychologist, you would be very doubtful that he would reach the right goal.
There is one correction, Mr. Malcolm, I'd like to make here. In that same piece that you're quoting from, I said that his methods are effective. His philosophy of love, of the oppressor, I thought, was psychologically burdensome. But I would be more interested in your goals. What are the goals of the movement which you represent so effectively?
Just as you said in the same article, see, Mr. Muhammad is trying to get us on God's side, so God will be on our side and help us to fight our battles against the very vicious, deceitful, hypocritical enemy. And this is why Mr. Muhammad put so much stress upon moral reformation. That when Negroes stop getting drunk, when Negroes stop fornicating and committing adultery, when Negroes stop being addicted to drugs and these things that destroy the moral fiber and the morale of the Negro, then our people will be able to get together and unite in harmony and unity and get our own problem solved.
Toward what end would you want our people united? What would you...
Towards being on God's side. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that God now is about to establish a kingdom on this earth based upon brotherhood and peace. And the white man is against brotherhood, and the white man is against peace. His history on this earth has proved that. Nowhere in history has he been brotherly toward anyone. The only time he's brotherly toward you is when he can use you, when he can exploit you, when he can oppress you, when you will submit to him. And since his own history makes him unqualified to be an inhabitant or a citizen in a kingdom of brotherhood, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that God is about to eliminate that particular race from this earth. So since they are due for elimination, we don't want to be with them. We're not trying to integrate with that which we know has come to the end of its rope. We're trying to separate from it and get with something that's more lasting, and we think that God is more lasting than the white man.
So in effect, Minister Malcolm, your movement does not share the integration goals of the NAACP, CORE, Martin Luther King's movement, and the student nonviolent movement.
You don't integrate with a sinking ship. You don't do anything to further your stay aboard a ship that you see is on its way down to the bottom of the ocean. Moses tried to separate his people from Pharaoh, and when he tried, the magicians tried to fool the people into staying with Pharaoh. And we look upon these other organizations that are trying to get Negroes to integrate with this doomed white man as nothing but modern-day magicians, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as the modern-day Moses who's trying to separate us from the modern-day Pharaoh.
Well, do you feel that the Negroes who are attempting to influence the policies and actions of our federal government, the Attorney General, the President of the United States,
When James Baldwin recently had a conference with Robert Kennedy, he took Lena Horne, who's married to a white man, Lorraine Hansberry, who's married to a white man, Belafonte, who's married to a white woman, Edwin Berry of the Urban League, who's married to a white woman. Now, and whenever you have a group of black people sitting down with a white man supposed to represent the black masses, you can never get anybody who's involved in any intermarriage in any kind of situation who will be qualified to represent themselves as spokesmen for the black masses in this country. They were representing their own personal desires. They want to mix and mingle so that they can take their wife. They can go any of these places with their wife. They're involved in a mixed marriage. But you can't find masses, sir, of black people who will accept any black man who's married to a white man as a spokesman for black people, or a black woman who's married to a white man as a spokesman or a representative of what black people feel and think.
What do you feel the Negro should do in respect to obtaining even more effective protection from our federal government.
You never will get protection from the federal government. That's like King is asking Kennedy to go to Alabama and stand in the doorway, put his body in the doorway. That's like asking the fox to protect you from the wolf. And when now the masses of black people can see this, and it is only the Negro leadership, the bourgeois, hand-picked handful of Negroes who think that they're going to get some kind of respect, recognition, or protection from the government. The government is responsible for what is happening to black people in this country. The president has power. You notice he didn't send any troops into Birmingham to protect the Negroes when the dogs were biting the Negroes. The only time he sent troops into Birmingham was when the Negroes erupted. And then the president sent troops in there not to protect the Negroes, to protect them white people down there from those erupting Negroes.
Well, are not Negro Americans citizens?
If they were citizens, you wouldn't have a race problem. If the Emancipation Proclamation was authentic, you wouldn't have a race problem. If the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment to the Constitution was authentic, you wouldn't have a race problem. If the Supreme Court desegregation decision was authentic, you wouldn't have a race problem. All of this is hypocrisy. And it is this hypocrisy that has been practiced by the so-called white, so-called liberal for the past 400 years that compounds the problem, makes it more complicated instead of eliminating the problem.
Well, Minister Malcolm, what do you see as the future of the Negro in America?
What
do you think will be the culmination of the present thrust?
Until the white man in America sits down and talks with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he won't even know what the race problem, what makes the race problem what it is. And it's just like Pharaoh couldn't get a solution to his problem until he talked to Moses, or Nebuchadnezzar or Belshazzar couldn't get a solution to his problem until he talked to Daniel. The white man in America today will never understand the race problem or come anywhere near getting a solution to the race problem until he talks to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Then Mr. Muhammad will give him God's analysis, not some kind of political analysis or psychologist analysis or some kind of clergyman's analysis, but God's analysis. That's the analysis that Moses gave Pharaoh. That's the analysis that Daniel gave Belshazzar. And today we have a modern Belshazzar and a modern Pharaoh sitting in Washington, D.C.
What do you think is going to happen in Birmingham, in Jackson, Mississippi, in Philadelphia, in Boston, in Englewood?
Well, Dr. Clark, as you know, these Negro leaders have been telling the white man everything is all right, everything's under control. And they've been telling the white man that Mr. Muhammad is wrong, don't listen to him. But everything that Mr. Muhammad has been saying is going to come to pass, is now coming to pass. And now the Negro leaders are standing up saying that we're about to have a racial explosion. You're going to have a racial explosion. And a racial explosion is more dangerous than an atomic explosion. It's going to explode because black people are dissatisfied. They're dissatisfied not only with the white man, but they're dissatisfied with these Negroes who have been sitting around here posing as leaders and spokesmen for black people and actually making the problem worse instead of making the problem better.
What will be the consequence of this explosion?
Anytime you put too many sparks around a powder keg, the thing is going to explode. And if the thing that explodes is still inside the house, then the house will be destroyed.
But what will happen?
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is telling the white man, get this powder keg out of your house. Let the black people in this country separate from you while there's still time. And if the black man is allowed to separate and go onto some land of his own, where he can solve his own problems, then there won't be any explosion. And the Negroes who want to stay with the white man, let them stay with the white man. But those who want to leave, let them go with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
As I understand your position, Minister Malcolm, the only thing that can save us from a catastrophic explosion is complete separation.
Complete separation is the only solution to the black and white problem in this country.